Wait. All right. All right. Good morning. Lottie Dottie, everybody. Good morning. I am Tarina Ali, the founder of Tarina Ali Therapeutic Services. And we're so happy to bring another rendition of the humanity of clergy. And today we're talking about couples in ministry. And I'm so happy to have two amazing couples here today to join us. And I want to say thank you in advance for being here. What my mother used to say all the time, people don't have to do anything for you at all. And so I honor that. I honor you for taking the time today to show up. And I'm excited to do these conversations. We do them once a month. Generally before the month's out, it fluctuates generally between the 3rd and the 4th Saturday of the month. Same time, 9 to 10:15 a.m. And I don't hold you hostage. We start on time and end on time because Saturday people have things to do. And so we're going to get started with just some brief introductions. Yet again, I'm Tarina Ali. I am a counselor and an elder in the Lord's Church. And I've been in church all my life, but I actually started in ministry about officially, let me say that, 6 years ago, because I struggled with coming on with the whole titles and all those kinds of things. So I just felt like that's just not me per se, right? But God is good. And so that's just a little bit about me. I'm a counselor by profession and trade. And so I love connecting with people on deep soul levels. So that's just a little bit about me. Oh, and I'm connected with National Community Church. And if I can go to the boroughs, if you all can introduce yourself, how long you've been in ministry, the ministry you're connected with.
Good morning, Elder Counselor Tarina. It's a great honor to be on here. We do love you dearly, and we don't take this lightly that you have us on your show, and we appreciate it. My name is Pastor Burrows, and this is my wife, Stacy Burrows. We have been in ministry, our current ministry, Restoration Outreach Community Center, we are pastor for 3 years, but we have been in ministry, her and I, for over 20 years. We actually started a ministry of cleaning the church. So we've been together a good little while, but we just appreciate it. And we thank you for the honor of being on your show.
Thank you so much. Glad to have you. Pastor J and Dr. J. I just think those names are just so cute, right? What are the odds of that?
No, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good stuff. Yep. So I am, I guess I'm still getting used to saying pastor, because like y'all say, well, I'll say like my pastor told me. He said, you've always been a pastor. I'm just recognizing, because I'm an associate pastor, by the way. I'm just recognizing the call of God in your life, and as you all know, with ministry and everything, it's one of those things where you realize you've been in training and in ministry much longer than you probably held the title. You know what I mean? So with all that said, I think it was 3 years now? Yeah, about 3 years. So 3 years as an associate pastor. My local church, Encounter Christian Center, senior pastor is Dr. Wilson Morales. And we're together. This is my right hand right here.
That's my homie. I'm here to help.
So,
whatever way I'm supposed to.
Yeah, so she'll tell you real fast. She's like, I'm Dr. J. So if you look at that wall back there, that's all her. I'm in her office right now. So she's Dr. J. She's like, I'm not first lady, I'm not that, but she still supports and serves. So we'll probably get into that conversation a little later on, because sometimes we realize that our support is just as important than if we're holding a microphone in our hand. I'm glad to be here as well. So thank you for inviting us.
Awesome. And just also, Pastor Burrows, how long have you all been married?
Ooh, that's a good question. No, we actually been married. This year will be 22 years.
Amen.
Been married. So yeah, I always remember because we got married in 2000. So just in case my memory go bad, I can add. So 22 years.
Love it. Right. That's important. Yes, Pastor J and Dr. J, how long have you all been married?
Yep. So this year will be 20 years in September.
Woo,
We met each
woo.
other in 2000, so we know we've been together 22 years.
Yep. So just in case
Easy
my
math.
memory go bad, that's my marker.
Right.
And so
Awesome.
yes.
That is so good. And how we're even starting just having laughter, right? And lightheartedness, that's just the tone of this, right? And it's just so important because I think also for some who see the outside of ministry, right? Sometimes I think the perception is just people are just so stoic, right? That you don't laugh, you don't have a personality, that, you know, you talk about church all day long, right? It's these narratives that people have in their minds about what church is, what ministry is, what ministry looks like. And so let's just get right into the questions. And so I wholeheartedly believe that, you know, we're people first, right? We're human beings first, right? You're a married couple. We attend church, we serve in ministry. And so it's the humanity of the person, which I think is just so important, that I've seen it even in ministry paces where people miss the humanity part. And I think it's just important to focus on that, not negating, right, what we're here to do, because this is a ministry as well. But you have to take care of your humanity. You have to care for your marriage. You have to care for your family, because I've seen it in some regards is that if it's lopsy-turvy, where the focus is outside of to ministry just solely, I think some things get missing in the marriage and the family. And so we're going to have those real honest conversations about it. So, but even before getting into the ministry part, we're just talking about the marriage part. Even before you were entering into the marriage, were there any narratives that you had to change in your mind about how you saw a marriage coming up, or what you viewed marriage as? Were there any things that you just need to look at when you were talking about marriage? Because I'm say for me, me growing up, the narrative that I saw for marriage was either neither there, it wasn't there, right, or it was chaotic. And so for me, I had to work on seeing something different, because honestly, in my circle, I just really didn't see that. And so the question, let's go to the Barrows. Was there anything that you had to change your mindset about marriage or how you saw it?
I will start with myself. I came from a single parent background. So a lot of times when you get into marriage and you really think it's about you, you know, you got this selfish conscience that everything is you until you know, one thing I would say about marriage, and I don't think a lot of people attach this scripture, iron sharpens iron. So when you in a marriage, your wife, your spouse is going to sharpen you in areas that you really may not be prepared for in marriage. So one thing I had to fix was my selfishness, because a lot of times I was tunnel vision. It's about me. I'm the man of the house, you know, my way or the highway. But one thing you learn when God humble you in a marriage, it will show you got areas where you need to be submissive, first to him, submissive to yourself, and submissive to your spouse, because it ain't about you, especially when you have children. That'll really open your eyes even the more. But when it came to my wife and the person she was, I had to really check myself, because a lot of times you go in the perspective that, let me be frank, every woman is the same. You can tell them do this, but no, sometimes you're going to get a woman who, a lady, a girl, whatever, going to say, hey, you know what? You need to hey, it ain't about you. You need to get yourself together. And marriage really opens your eyes to a point where, you know what? Woo, it's more than about me. So my narrative changed when the further we got along, especially fast forward to COVID. COVID really opened my eyes, Elder, about being more with my wife. And she, you know, she can, I'm sorry, just take a little time. She go.
No, but that is good. I thank you for your honesty. And I thank you for even sharing the part about how you were reared in a single parent home, right? Because that could shape the narrative also. So I thank you for that honesty, because there are people who are entering marriage who don't have the framework of it from even growing up. And I think that shapes and molds us as well. But I love how you said it's not about you and the iron piece and sharpening iron, and how you had tunnel vision and how you had to change in some perspectives. And so that is just a very good level of honesty, because I've been in the rooms of NA and AA, and they said the first step for a lot of people, the hard to do, is admit. Admitting is the hardest thing for a lot of people. So thank you for that honesty. Pastor Stacy, can you chime in on this?
One thing I had to make the adjustment to is my perspective of what marriage should be and what a husband should be.
Oh,
because one, we go by the word, of course, explains the roles of a husband, but it also, you have to do that in the context of wisdom as it pertains to your husband, because every person is not the same. And so I had to understand that my husband is not me and I'm not him. We complement each other. And so when you complement each other, you bring different things to the table. So I can't expect for him to think like me, do like me, or I'd be married to myself, So I, my narrative of being able to work with a complement versus a similar person. We're very alike in many ways. We just go about things differently to get to the same place. And through 22 years, we've learned to grow, and you learn that you grow daily. I'm not the same person I was when I married him 22 years ago. And so you learn to also to embrace and love the new person as they evolve and as they grow. And sometimes we want God to do things with our spouse, but then we also have to be able to make the adjustment as they grow and as they mature, and vice versa, and be able to love them on the level that they are at that time. So for me, it was the expectation of who my husband should be versus embracing and loving the person that they are, and praying and continuing to walk with them through the journey that God brings them on, so that they can be the best person that they can be, so that we can be the best people we can be. And as we do that together, our marriage evolves and we become successful. So that was, for me, that was the change in narrative.
That is so good. Even what you started out of, the woulda, couldas, or what a husband is supposed to be. My therapist had said, because I used to have all this, well, you're supposed to do this, and so, or well, you just should know. And she would say, well, where did you get that from? Because we bring our own thoughts and narratives, like, well, someone should be a certain way, or you just should know a certain thing. But that's just not facts. We all know different things. We all come from a different lens. So that is definitely a healthy conversation. Thank you so much. Let's toss it to Pastor J and Dr. J. What narratives did you see about marriage, or did you have to change in your thought processes about marriage?
When I saw the question originally, I was like, well, what was it? So I did not necessarily anything well, let me start here. The one thing that I definitely made sure of is I made a conscious decision that I plan to stay, and I don't plan to go outside of our marriage. No. She being funny right now.
He told me, he said, if I ask you to be my woman, you're going to be my wife. He was not playing any games.
No, so yeah, and absolutely right. So my point is, because of around me, I've seen marriages that would last for a certain period of time, and then for whatever reason, people have their reasons, and it just wouldn't last. Like, I thought they were gonna be together, or like, dang, they not together anymore, and those types of things. So, and like I said, there are different reasons, but my goal was, especially even when you look through family, and we realize, I mean, this is a church conversation, so you realize that sometimes the enemy can start to do certain things in a family, and if you're not being ignorant to it, you can realize that, hey, why does, and I'm gonna pick something random, so I ain't talking about nothing in particular. Why does it seem like every person or every man in the family go through this? Why does every woman in the family go through this?
Can you pull the mic up a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Yeah, so why does every man in the family seem to go through this? Or why does every woman seem to go through this? And then saying, hey, well, some of this stuff may just be what it is, but I'm like, look, I'm on purpose, I'm not planning to separate. I'm not planning to step out. I'm not planning to, I'm like I said, I'm just picking up other things because you never know who's watching. I'm not planning to be abusive. That's not even in my nature. But, those things like that where I purposely said, we're going to have this marriage and I'm going to stay. So as far as like concepts, like just seeing what's around you, well, I'm not going to do it like that, and stick to it. Don't let life, because life will try to throw things at you, to try to get you to change your mind about certain things. Love is a decision and a choice, and it's so interesting because I was just studying it. We know the scripture says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And love isn't just a warm and fuzzy feeling. Warm, love is that decision of like, hey, and included in that definition of love is preference. I prefer you. I could go out and find somebody look just like her somewhere in the world. So is it what she looks like? Is it how she's built? Is it how she's made and all this other stuff? At some point, I have to stay committed to my decision to choose her. You understand what I'm saying? And that's my goal. That's my goal. And I'm gonna toss it right here because it's so serious, and it's something we talk about all the time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Dr. J.
Just yesterday, we were in the closet. And I had to give him the insurance card that we just got brand new. I said, we changed the address. Here's a new insurance card. And then I turned around. I was like, that was a real adult thing to say. Like, like we've really like been adulting our whole, since we met. Like he was finishing his bachelor's. I was just starting my master's. We've learned life together. And so for me, when I met him, I had a wall up, and we met online too. So that's a whole nother story. But I had a wall up, and I chose for myself to know who Janice was before I ventured out and found or determined that I was ready for marriage, because I'm a lot to handle. I know. I'm better. And so I needed to know who I was and what I wanted to do and how I felt in my individuality. Because even dating prior, you have people's thoughts that are projected on you. Oh, you should look this way, or you shouldn't act like that. Don't slouch in your seat, blah, blah, blah. You can see, this is me. This is how I am every day, all day. So I knew that whomever I was to be with, I needed to still feel my authentic self. And I wanted the person to be their authentic self, because together we would be able to conquer the world. Never taken away. He's very much introverted, only extroverted in situations like this. When Pastor J comes off the stage, I can see the energy just goes down. I'm leave him alone when he's home. But I'm the extroverted one. I think I'm more ambivert now, just being around him. But it works for us. Just like the pastors, Stacy and is it Monte?
Yes.
Okay. That, like they said, you find what connects you and what makes it work. So that's really what we did. And again, when we came around to him actually coming into my office at the university and saying, hey, I want you to be my woman on November 12th, 2001. Yeah, I literally shouted right there because I knew that it was time for me to restructure myself to prepare to be the person that he needed me to be. And also to start getting to a point and being able to communicate what I needed from him, because that wall still existed. So we worked in our earlier years to learn how to do this adult thing together, even when we weren't married yet. And I think that readily prepared us, because people are like, well, year one is difficult. I can't really say that any of our years have really been difficult as far as us as a couple.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've yet to see like a lot of those markers that people say, watch out for year one.
Year seven.
Okay.
We just treat it the same way. Now I grew up in a 2-parent household. they'll be married 52 years.
Wow.
But
Wow.
what I learned from them, now they can go to bat at each other. I mean, they butt heads or whatever, but I also have seen them love on each other. So my thing was to take those qualities as far as uplifting him. Every morning I'd be like, hey, morning, Zaddy. I mean, like, I just do stuff because I know it's going to make him smile. I know it, the way that the very first word you use in a day, if they're positive, it can make your whole day. So we don't, I mean, I can say maybe we had like little arguments, disagreements, and counting them on one hand, and we've been together for like 22 years.
That's awesome. And so much you all have said. Even Pastor Jay was talking about just the intentionality that he had, the focus of what his goal was when he met, and knowing that he had made a commitment to stay, made a commitment to be the husband. And something key that I heard you say was in reference to sometimes we may see things that may attempt to come up in our family that look like similarities or certain things, and just being aware. I wholeheartedly believe in what you said. Like, for example, some of the themes in my family had come up where the majority were single parents having children outside of wedlock, and seeing those carry on through different generations, and just being fully aware of some of the things that come up in your lineage, however that may look, and having an intentionality with the help of the Holy Spirit, saying, I want to break certain things that I have saw or may have been raised as, and to do something different. But I like how Pastor Jay had said it. It's an intentionality. I don't think everything is just like by osmosis. Like, you have a role in that. Like Pastor Monse started talking about, having a role to shift and to change. It's not just like if you put a book on my head, like everything is just about to sink in. Like, no, you have to live out the Bible. You have to live out what the Word of God says, and have God invited into the space to help you. Because I just don't really think we can do this in our own humanity. You just have to be led by the Holy Spirit to help you, because we are human. And just going to the next questions, that even though like and I hear say you laugh and you joke, but you're two different people, right? And so you're not going to always see things eye to eye. You're going to see it from a different angle. You're going to see it a different way. But how do you weather those moments when, because it happens, right? You're upset at something your spouse may have said or may have done, or whatever the case may be. How do you weather those particular moments? And I'll go to here, Pastor Jay and Dr. J, because I heard you say you can count on your hands how many times, it has been heavy like that, or if I'll use that word, of how have you all been able to weather those moments? Because you will disagree.
Yep.
Well, yeah, that's cool. Well, for me, I know I have to put myself in a space to be honest, because I don't want I want to be able to feel like I can say what I need to say to get it off my chest. And so if it's a difficult situation, I automatically go to him and say, hey, I need to talk to my friend. I just need to, because we can, I mean, even though we're together, we segment that the same conversations we had when we were friends, and how raw and authentic and honest they were. We don't give that up. So he knows that something's coming. It might not even necessarily be with him. It could just be for something in general that I might initially feel uncomfortable talking about. So when we get into that friend mode, it just makes it a lot easier. Also getting to know how we are, because I'm the emotional one, and I'm not saying, and it has nothing to do with gender or whatever. I just tend to be the emotional
Really?
So if something, rarely do I cry, but if something brings me to tears, there is something wrong.
Okay.
And so we just approach it knowing each other. I know for him, he might not automatically want to talk about it because he wants to process whatever has gone on. And I had to learn to let him go process, because a lot of that, when it would blow up, is because I wouldn't let him go process.
Got it.
So we have these two personalities. So I'm like, we're gonna talk about this. I'm good. So that's when we found that we met a common ground, knowing that one, I had to hold it in until I knew he was ready to discuss it, because that's when we found out that those conversations were most productive, and we actually got to an end result. And in the midst of discussion, we figured out where things may have went wrong, where things was misunderstood. And in the midst of putting that out there, one by one, we're apologizing for every single thing. like that? Okay, thank you. So we try to dissolve the issue right then and there when we have those crucial conversations. And once it's done, it's no bringing it back up. I remember when you did, and we don't roll like that. And I think that helps when you can have the situation, dissolve the situation, and forget about the situation. And I mean, really forget about it.
Those some great nuggets that you just gave. What I heard you to say was talking to your friend. Just thinking about how you would talk to your friends and having that safe space to come to have an honest conversation about it. And then two, once it is the timing of it, because just because you're ready to say it, it doesn't mean your partner is ready to receive it. And learning that, I think that is just such a great nugget right there, because we are wired different. I am that person who I need to talk about it in the instant moment and get it out and share it. And my spouse is just totally different. And so it is respecting that. And I haven't always done that correctly. I'm being very honest about that. Like I have not, because it makes me antsy. And so I want to like, okay, let's talk about this now. And so having that mutual respect, and allowing your mate to process and have the time frame that they need when doing that. And so I want to go into when we talk about boundaries in ministry, whereas how do you manage boundaries where you're the couple supposed to be the unit, the unified front, and then there's ministry, there's people in ministry, your obligations in ministry. How do you manage keeping the unity, the hub of the couple, and placing those boundaries with, or do you, or is it needed? Let me not, say, is it needed to have boundaries with people in ministry or just people in general? And I'll go to the Burrows for this one.
Okay, absolutely. Yes, the first question, the first answer is yes, it's absolutely a requirement to have boundaries, because although we are pastors for the ministry, we are a family and we are a couple first, because if we're not good as a couple, we're not going to be good as pastors to the flock. And we have to be able to balance both of them and establish boundaries first with us and then with our church family. So you never want to give the enemy a toehold, right? Because he's going to come anyway. So we have to have stuff in place that will protect us, and so that we have signals, we have eyes, you know how that look like don't no. When it comes, I'm definitely in ministry. I'm the executive pastor. My husband's the senior pastor. So when it comes to business matters, it basically comes to me, and I filter him because I know how he needs to hear information. You got to know your spouse. So and then also, if it's a matter that has to do with men, my husband takes that. If it has a matter that has to do with the women, I take that, because you just want to make sure that you establish from the beginning, we don't play that, we're not in a room by ourselves with the person of the opposite sex. If it's a time where it's a matter that I have to deal with a male, there's always somebody with me. It's just like, we've established that early. And then when it comes to our family, we make sure we have family time. And we make sure that we have date time, date nights, and nothing interferes with that. If we say Friday night is our time, if people call from the ministry, we'll give you a call back. We have to have our time, because we have to be okay with us, right? And so, and I also understand that at the end of the day, we have conversations that we separate. Okay, if I need to talk to him about church business, I say, Pastor Monte, he already knows to change his mindset. Okay. Got it. Because we're at home about to talk about church stuff. If I say Bay, or if I say we have to be able to do that, because we have to be able to compartmentalize as we deal with different matters, as parents, as spouses, as pastors, as clinicians. We have to be able to deal with things in a way that's compartmentalized, and then with wisdom be able to interchange them as they are appropriate. So definitely boundaries are important, and that's just wisdom, and then to keep our sanity, right, and to be able to allow us to function effectively in each aspect of our lives. So,
and I heard you use the word, Pastor Stacy, wisdom. That is just the key, and I think that comes over time. In all reality, right, we're all growing and learning as we mature, as we have life experience and things of that nature. And this is a question I want to continue on with you. Say, for example, if you have a newer couple in marriage, right, coming to ministry, and from what hearing you guys are pretty clear on your boundaries set, how they work. If there's an issue with a female in the church, Pastor Stacy, you address that. If there's an issue with a male, Pastor Monte, you do that. And so, but I can imagine there may be some couples who have some challenges setting those clear boundaries in ministry. So what could you suggest to another couple, not just maybe with a new couple, but just any couple who's struggling with maintaining level of boundaries for whatever reason that they're struggling with maintaining boundaries?
Communication, definitely communication. Trust me, the spiel I just gave you, we didn't wake up like this. You know, we
he didn't wake up like this, right? Thank you. Right, exactly.
Listen,
right.
Like, you know, through we've been married for 22 years. We've been in ministry together for 20. And so, you know, it came through, you know, situations, because you don't know what you don't know until it happens, right?
Absolutely.
And so you definitely have to have those type of conversations and know your spouse, know what makes it, what's comfortable for them. You know, there's some people, it's okay, you know, you can be in a closed room with a person of the opposite sex, and that's what it entails, you know, as well, you know, with my secular job, that happens. You know, I have to go to different lunches and be in different arenas. But you know, as my husband said, he's the only child. I'm one of 9, so it don't matter. So, but for him, I make a phone call, babe, I got a lunch, you know, I'm going to lunch with such and such, just in case somebody see us in the street, you know.
Right.
He already knows there should not be anything going on that your spouse doesn't necessarily know about, especially if you know that is a sensitive subject for them.
Gotcha.
So it's that conversation piece. It's recognizing that you're, as I think Pastor Jay said, you're in it for the long haul. You're in it. You're not going anywhere. You're not doing anything. And so if that is the case, then transparency is key. There's no secrets. And so you just continue to be communicative, and you deal with issues as they come, and know that we're all human. We all have our insecurities in one way or the other. And sometimes we try to hide them with all this other stuff.
Oh, that's
we're
so
with
good.
Ourselves, there are some places where we have some soft spots, some raw, right? Some touchy things. And so if we're honest and transparent and be able to talk about those, then we can walk through this together, and we set up boundaries that will allow both of us to be whole as we complement each other, and not looking for the other one to complete you.
Oh, that's just so good. What I heard you say was, like, for example, each human being has a level of vulnerability or just something about them, that a touchy space, right? And what you said is sometimes we hide that. And in the instances, sometimes too, people cannot be fully even transparent with their mate. And that's just the reality of it. And sometimes that people have to grow in those spaces where they feel a level of even comfort. But I think that is just so key that you said that, is to put those parameters and boundaries in place as a unit, because we all have something, right? We all have something, and a level of protection that will be put in place so that you can grow and flourish in whatever those little iffy spots are, because we all have them. And as you said, Pastor Stacy, you know, you didn't just wake up like this, right? That it's an intentionality, like Pastor Jay was talking about. It's an intentionality that has to be done to say, hey, I want to become better in this area. I'm gonna be honest about, hey, I don't like that. That makes me feel uncomfortable. And so let's go to Pastor Jay and Dr. Jay. How do you all manage those boundaries in ministry, or just in general as a couple?
Yeah. So with respect to that's another thing you just have to do on purpose. And, you know, even going back to something my wife said earlier today about us being friends, you, at the end of the day, I'm still looking out for my friend, regardless of whatever that means. And so just reaching back to something Pastor Stacy said about knowing you have vulnerabilities, or knowing the other person has vulnerabilities. And the thing, especially even with marriage, so this is it isn't even just a ministry thing. If you know, and this is about respect. So the thing that I definitely wanted to chime in on that was making sure you respect the other person enough to not exploit the weaknesses.
Wow.
Everybody ain't strong in every place. So you got to know that, okay, I know I might be able to handle something like this, but this might make her uncomfortable. And because I know this might be a little bit too uncomfortable for her, I'm going to stay away from that out of respect. You understand what I'm saying? So don't, and so if there are other people in ministry, don't put a super spiritual label on it and be like, well, I just believe God want me to do this. Well, all right, I got you. Just back up a second though, because don't try to slap a God sticker on it when you know by doing what you're saying God is calling you to do, you're going to disrespect your mate. Or
Come on. Come
or you're going
on.
to disrespect them, or you walking out what God told you to do is not going to keep peace in your home. God loves your ministry as well as your home, and that needs to make sure you need to actively make sure that you preserve both. So Pastor Stacy said a lot of good stuff. So as far as like boundaries and all those types of things. So at the end of the day, it's about respect. And just like a side comment, just as far as like keeping things transparent. So outside of pastoring, outside of my regular day job, I'm a photographer, and you know I work with all different types of people. Most of my clientele is women and all that kind of stuff. So if I know, like, if I know homegirl so-and-so coming through, she want to do a little, Fabulous and 40 photo shoot, and a couple of these little outfits is going to be a little questionable or something like that. I'm like, hey, babe, this is what's coming up. This is what's going on. And she knows. She like, okay. So
I say, don't be by yourself.
Don't be by yourself. And so that's what I know. So here's the thing. Unless I,
let me say, don't be.
No, hold on.
I'm sorry.
So I was gonna say, so some men may not like this, but unless I get permission from her to do something that we've already said that I don't know about that, unless I come back and get her permission first, I have no right and responsibility to do it. You understand what I'm saying? So that's, I think Pastor Monte said earlier, and a lot of men like to skip over this, but the Bible doesn't just say, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands. It says, submit yourselves one to another. You know what I mean? So regardless of what I do, that's my responsibility. And I keep that in mind. Sure, I'm the husband. Sure, I'm the head, but I still have a responsibility to submit myself to her. So that I keep that in my mind all the time. And that's my job as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to say that normally when I'm telling him not to be by himself, I totally trust him. Not saying I don't trust his clients, but at the same time, I don't want it ever be a situation where he feels like he's going to be compromised, where it's going to be their opinion against his opinion. That's the situation that happened. Always have a third party, always have somebody in there with you. Before I take a real quick family break, because we do have kids going on upstairs, I just wanted to say, when he became a pastor, the day before he became a pastor, I told him my role. I told him I'm not a first lady. I have my reasons for that. I think that I go. If you're gonna go by title, you can call me Janice or Jay. If you're gonna go by title, go by the title I earned. Him being a pastor was something that he earned is something that the Holy Spirit told our pastor that he should be in a position. I do Dr. J, he does Pastor J. But I also told him I am your pit bull. And I hold very tight to that title.
Pastor Monte, it's all right. I'm okay over here, brother. I saw you. I'm okay. I'm fine.
So especially in the midst of the pandemic, COVID, the world opening up, my husband is very, he's very approachable.
Mhm.
He wants to embrace everybody, and I have no problem with that. He knows his limits. Some of the congregants may not. And so that's where I find that I have to come off of my chain and I have to address situations either in person or virtually or via Facebook message to where I have to set those boundaries in a very cordial yet very stern way. So that's where we work together in that he's like, and look, and I get it. Even with some pastors, ministers, etc., there are expectations that congregants are like, hey, you should be a certain way, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great, you're the pastor, you do that thing. I don't have those requirements. Therefore, I step in and I do what I need to do in order to protect him and work as a very good and dedicated helpmate. Excuse me for a moment. I will be right back.
Okay. And, I love the beauty and the complexity of how each marriage just looks different, right? And that not the cookie cutter mode of my marriage is supposed to be exactly like this. And what works for Pastor J and Dr. J, that works for them. And what works for Pastor Stacy and Pastor Monte, that works for them. And I just think it's just important to have the nucleus and to work on the boundaries and the things that you need to do within your marriage, right? Because it just looks so different for everybody. And this is going into where we're still talking about, boundaries and the importance of saying, hey, I know both couples have children. You all both have children. And so that's throwing a different dynamic also into the mix as well, where your kids have to be protected, or your kids have to be included, or your kids have to be mindful, because the reality is we're dealing with human beings in church settings, right? Period. End of discussion, right? People don't always get it right. People don't always say the correct things. And so, but how important it is, even though the couple, you all may be in ministry, and I know there are kids who do things in ministry as well, but how do you allow the children to, how do you manage that piece with their kids? They're growing and they're still flourishing. Reason why I'm bringing this up, because I've seen in instances where sometimes the children, and I'm not judging either way, but I'm just saying how I've seen it, where some kids their activities or anything that they did were relegated just to the church ministry. So if their parents went somewhere, this is what they were doing, and they would play with the kids there, but there weren't any things outside of that, right? No other additional activities per se, right? And every family just does things differently, but how do you allow your children to grow and flourish, even though you have ministry assignments? Let's go to the Burrows for this one.
I think the biggest thing is to teach your children to be holistic. I think sometimes we fail that, and let's be honest, our children will be out in the world probably 6 days a week, sometimes even 7, and 1 day on Sunday or 2 days on Bible study. But sometimes what we do is make sure we create an environment where they know the foundation is God. And we just want them to make sure that they can be themselves. We don't push what we think they should be. What we push is God, and push them, allow them to grow, because at the end of the day, they are different. Even though they are our seed, they have their own path. And when they grow, you grow, because your role starts to change. When they get out in the world, you're going to be more of that, you know what, let me be that sounding board, because they're going to go through a lot. But we push the foundation Christ, believe in God. You're going to go through your ups and downs. You can be in the world, but not of the world. You can, see what other people, you can play basketball, you can be in sports. And sometimes, let's be honest, so it is in the natural, it's in the spirit. We have to teach a balance. And, we don't want to ever pressure out, because we have 2 boys. And the difficulties they have, but we push them to be men, but men of God first. But we push them to have their own ideas, but most of all, we push that we respect them.
Mhm.
We respect their voice, because if they don't see a balance at home, they're going to lead their way to the world and do the things of the world. So we do teach them, hey, it's okay to because you got to get a job in the world.
Mhm.
So
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully,
you know, I
that's
know
right.
a lot of entrepreneurs, but you got to give. God created everything
Mhm.
to please him. It's
Mhm.
okay to touch bases to those things. But we, most of all, me and my wife, and she can expound more, we just want them to be holistic, because I think, as you stated, a lot of children who were pushed more in one arena, when they got in the world, they was off balance. They, as they say, became socially awkward.
Mhm.
And I don't want that for my children. I want them to be balanced enough where they get a clear mind, because if they weigh heavy on one area, they're going to push towards that area. So I want them to have a balance where, even though, you know, things may shift, they focus and center on God.
That is, you know, and reason I bring this, I was in church years ago, and I know things have evolved and grown and changed. And it's had to be in the early 2000s. And at that time, my former pastors, their daughter was a teenager, and she had went to some party or what have you. And I guess some of the members saw the pastor's daughter at the party. And I never forgot this. So the pastor's wife, well, the co-pastor, she came on the pulpit and she said, I need to address this. She said, yes, my daughter went to a party last night. We allow her to be human and a child and to experience life like we all did. And so she was just basically like, I don't want to have this conversation that you all coming to me saying, because we allow as a couple our child to go to a party. Because the reality of it is, and I feel like that people do put expectations on the children who come from clergy families. They just do. I'm not saying it's right or what have you, but people put the expectations of the parents, because the parents went into ministry, right? That the kids are supposed to just fall suit and fall in line and be, you know, little junior, you know, what have you, right? But they're kids, right? And so I think people miss that sometimes. And Pastor Stacy, if you can speak briefly to that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, you and I've had several conversations about this. You know, our kids are kids, and we allow them to be kids and experience what that means for them. Because as my husband says, we are in this world, we're not of it, but we're in it. And we have to allow them to learn how to function in it successfully. And that means having to be able to work with all kinds and deal with all kinds of people, you know, in all kinds of cultures. We definitely try to expose our kids to multicultural situations and multi-social economical situations, because we have to be able to minister. If you're going, we keep saying our kids have these callings on our lives, but who they're going to minister to? They got to understand, you know, who they're called to minister to and how to be able to minister to those people. And I think it's important to note that at the end of the day, we have to be able to, as my husband said, to respect them as people. They're little people, but they're people, and they have to go through the exercises of experiencing how to socialize and how to determine right and wrong, and then apply what we're teaching them. If we only have them in this, you know, this petri glass of the church, and then they're not able to apply what we're even teaching them into the world, then when we release them, you know, I used to live, I'm a Jersey girl, and so we had a little Catholic school at the top of the hill. And so of course, you know, the hood kids were able to kind of be a little bit more freer, but then we would go to the parties with the little Catholic girls, and they would be out of pocket, like they were just going ballistic. We're like, they doing way too much, but it was because they're so sheltered here that when we finally release, they like, you know, wild animals. But when you allow them to experience and say there's no taboo about socializing, there's no taboo. You can be at a party and socializing. There's a way to do it the right way. But when you're saying that's taboo, now you're giving the kids something they really want to do, and when they do it, they can go all the way.
Wait, I
So,
agree.
we
Yeah.
have to use balance, not just as pastors, but as parents.
Yeah.
And understanding, like my husband said, give them the foundation of what's appropriate, what's right, and, allow them to grow and trust the prayers that we've been
Yes.
praying over their
Wow.
lives.
Yes.
We can't keep them sheltered forever. They're going to have to learn how to address it. And if we, and my last point is that we allow them to experience life with our tutelage.
Mhm.
So if we're allowing them to experience these things with us there, we can, talk about lessons learned, what we could have done differently, why that's not appropriate, why this person should not be who you're associating it with, and why, because we're transparent even and honest in our home. But if being social was taboo, they're not going to want to talk to us about it, and they're experiencing all this stuff on their own, and that's when things happen. So,
that is so good. And this is the purpose of these panels that I have monthly, to show that pastors and clergy with kids have to do the same thing that regular, like not just regular, but what other people, parents do as kids, and to dispel this mysticism, that you're just doing some different kind of thing because you're clergy and you have kids. It's like they're kids, and allow them to be kids, but that pastors are human beings, their kids are human beings. The only one that was divine is God. That he
Right.
is perfect and blameless. And so let's go to Pastor Jay and Dr. Ed, because you have children that are young, a little younger. And so how do you all navigate that process of having children and being involved in ministry as well?
So it's so interesting because I'm thinking about something that happened this past week, but I'm gonna try to boil it down to a basic example.
I can't hear you.
No, can you hear me now?
Okay, I
Okay.
got you.
I was just saying there was something that happened this past week. I said, but I'll try to boil it down to a basic example. Like Pastor Stacy and Pastor Monte, y'all said a whole bunch of good stuff, so I ain't even trying to rehash that. So first of all, my wife always makes sure that they have things that they can do or whatever it is, and it is without a church label on it or nothing like that. The things that they do in church are things that they said they wanted to do or agreed to do. So they're not being forced to do anything.
That's good.
However, if you can't behave yourself, I will still take that away from you.
Yes.
It just is what it is. We know that you chose it because you like to do it. So because you can't get yourself together, let's pull back on that for a little bit till you get it together, and then we'll let you go back. So they still have to be children. They still have to know their consequences, repercussions, things that they do. They're not allowed to just do everything just because they're like Pastor Jay's kids.
Yes.
No, no. Even though our senior pastor will spoil them.
Our senior pastor's my daughter's godfather.
Yeah, so like sometimes he's looking at me
He
like
takes
he's
both
like
of them
he's
in.
like he's like, can I? I'm like, go ahead.
Whatever happens in his office stays in his office.
Yeah,
Just stop.
But all that said, so kind of just stepping back, so that we maintain the fact that they have natural things to do, right? Whatever. And it's so interesting because I heard somebody explain the scripture. We all know the scripture: train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart. I heard someone explain it this way. I don't know if I haven't studied it out to see if this is actually what it means, but he said, train up a child in the way that they are bent, or the way that they are leaning to go. Meaning, I have to give explanation because I ain't necessarily sure this is 100%, but I like the interpretation. If we pay attention, and it's like this is our first training ground, looking at our kids, discerning. So this is a mixture of natural and spiritual. So at some point, you should be able to discern the gifts and talents that are on your kids. Those are the areas that we kind of push them toward. We know that our son, he's very much her personality. But he also has this desire to teach and nurture. So he loves little kids. He loves to try to be the big brother to them all, even though he's 11. So we know that he's a helper, he's an encourager, he's a teacher, he's all of those things. So for us to try to push him into doing something that doesn't fit where he's going is irresponsible as leaders in our homes. So if you take that as a pastor, And you also see people in the congregation where that sister so-and-so is not good at talking to folks in a clear and concise way. You probably should not have her in a leadership position trying to, engage people like on a friendly level or what have you, because everybody's at different places. Kids are the same way. So I think it's important to be able to discern where they are, to see what their gifts and talent. We check in with them all the time. Hey, do you like this? Do you still like this? Or like, how's this? So how's this been going? I haven't heard you talk about that in a while. That's so we can get a gauge of what is it that you're interested in, so that we can do a good job at making sure that you have access. And this is a good thing. So you talked about like things that we learned early on that we had to bring into it. One of the things that I wanted to make sure is that whatever they're interested in, not everything, because they can't get everything they want, but whatever they're really interested in, we try to provide access to either the information, whether it's, hey, here's some stuff I found on YouTube, or here's some books, or hey, here's, whatever it is, whether it's a toy or a game or something they can learn from, and make sure they have access to the things that they have an inclination toward.
We also, I'm really into social media, and I know that there are some parents that, kind of are maybe against it. But with TikTok and things of that sort, the stuff that they do, they have TikTok accounts. I also have the main account, so I can actually see who converses with them or whatever. I said, right now, don't take on any friends unless you know them. So they're little friends from school. They all on TikTok. So my son loves to dance and my daughter loves TikTok dances. That's the way they express themselves. So it doesn't seem it doesn't seem like it's a bad thing for me to allow them when I have areas to monitor them. And I think the moment that we provide the freedoms without them knowing that we support them, just like Pastor Monte said, it might just go on and do it anyway, because we're creating a path that would be in opposition of what we desire. Also, we've trained up our children since they were little. I'm a foodie. I'm the biggest foodie, but we love to go out and eat. But it's really me. I like to go out and eat.
Me too.
But so since they were in, the little what's it called, carrier, we're in restaurants, and not just like regular McDonald's, Burger King. We're going to restaurants as if we are dating, because just because kids there, it's not that we can't go out. And of course, people understand when they're little and they're babies, you have to make sure that you address their needs as babies. Okay. Feeding them, making sure that they're content, blah, blah, blah. But when they get older to a manner of understanding, like around 2 or 3, we even nurtured it in. No, that's too loud, baby. Don't do that. Don't throw that fork. Don't do that, blah, blah, blah. So, and it was a time that my son, he started taking his, what's those things? Those little, cereal things you give them, like, it's not Cheerios, but those little bites that babies have that look like cereal. But anyway, the puffs, that's what they are. We thought he was eating them like fast, but we realized he was throwing them on the floor. So he understood what no was, don't do that or whatever. So whenever things would occur, we would immediately address that, not just in a restaurant, but just in general. Address it immediately. Let's get through this. And now you understand the right or wrong. Let's move forward. So even now, both kids can go to a restaurant and people compliment us on how they behave themselves. All we're doing is sitting there eating, whether it's the waiter, a person that's just in a table next to us. Your kids are so well mannered. And these are like in really nice restaurants. And to us, it's like, we just did what we're supposed to do as parents. We don't think about it any other way. We're not like, hey, you got to be this way, because nope, my son's still loud like his mama. And we just say, calm down a little bit, just like he does me. My daughter's very reserved like he is. They're still who they are. But the fact that other people see it, whether it's in the restaurant, whether it's out in public, in the church, they still have the same mannerisms of respect and understanding environments that we've put in them since the beginning. So even though Pastor Jay became pastor 3 years ago, we have a 9 and 11-year-old. They were 6 and 8 when he became a pastor. So they were more in years of being themselves than they have been under having daddy as Pastor Jay. Okay. So we did not want to change that. We want them to be comfortable in who they are. And even when they get older, son's going to middle school, gotta catch the bus. I'm still like a little anxious about that. But he's going out on his own.
Mm-hmm.
I'm understanding how it was when my parents sent me on the public bus in Baltimore to go to the other side of the Baltimore city by myself. I'm getting it now. I'm feeling it just a little bit. Might need a little therapy, but but he's gonna go out
I'm here for
there.
you, sis. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I'm not ready, but he has to do it, and my daughter is right behind him. So they're going to be out in a world that they have to start making decisions for themselves. But we are also content in the fact that we've instilled those things in them that even now, when they're around us, they question, well, why they do that? And I don't understand that. Because I mean, that my daughter, she curse word, she shuts it off. My son, he'll let it go if something is on the radio, and you know, on regular radio, sometimes what we see as curse words is now regular. FAA, I mean, FAA was allows it. FCC, that's it. I knew it was something with an F and a double letter, but anyway, they allow it. So if it comes through, Jada is on it like, we need to switch the station, or if it's a playlist, and I will admit my playlist is very diverse. If it has a little if it has a little E, that change it, mommy, and because I'm just riding, I'm not paying attention, and I'll change it, or they'll change it if they're in the front seat. They are on it. The thing is, they don't disrespect people. If somebody curses, we got family members that are going to do it, you know, and they will choose if they shut down people, but they don't do it in a disrespectful manner. But in experiencing that for themselves, they have realized what is the what am I trying to say? What is the purpose of really using those words? What is it doing for me to use those words? So they're finding that I can still be Jada, I can still be Jason, I can still be personable, I can still talk to you. Now, will that change when they're out on their own? I don't know, and I won't be there, and I hope that I'm not if they ever tried it. But I do know that they know within themselves what is right and wrong, and I have to trust that they're going to do that, because as parents, we still have to allow them to experience things. And it might hurt us, the fact that, dang, why'd you have to go through that? I tried to stop you. But that is a part of parenting that we're going to have to learn, be involved in. Even some parents, you might have your child reared in the church, and they're like, look, I want to try something on my own. They go away to college. They're finding out, you know, what their relationship is. The biggest thing is, no matter whether we're rearing them from babies to adults, their relationship with God is their relationship with God. All we are supposed to do is to provide the tools for them to understand what direction they're going in, and how they will live their lives, you know, being a part of a family that's in ministry, but also being individuals as well.
You know, I'm grateful that you said that, Dr. J, and bringing this just humanity to it, and your own personalities, and keywords I heard, you know, discerning what is brewing in your kids, and seeing what their skills are and allowing that to flourish, but at the same time that they still have to follow rules, right? And if you're not behaving right, things get taken away. There's no pass because your mom and dad are clergy, right? That you can just go wreak havoc. It is no, you have rules and boundaries and things. And one thing that I just really like that you said is that, yes, our kids and even pastors and clergy, you may not listen to just all spiritual music, right? It's okay. You know what I mean? Like if you do, if your playlist is okay, right? I just think sometimes you're like, oh, like we haven't heard certain words before, or even if someone gets frustrated or what have you, allow people to be their human self, guided by the Holy Spirit, right? And I love this conversation of allowing children to explore and still being there to guide them. And as we're coming to our soft close, is what I call it, is that trusting each other as a mate. Because I heard a lot of that during this conversation, definitely trusting the God, right, in your mate, respecting, even though you may have permission to do it. Is this a good thing that I need to do? Will this work for me and my wife? And just because you can do it, I'm a firm believer, doesn't mean you need to do it. if it's going to cause discord, that maybe needs something that you need to pull back from with that, because Pastor Monte talked about that earlier at the beginning, right? Of pulling the reins, and sometimes it's not just about you, it's about who you are connected with. But how do you trust the voice of your spouse, even though you may not fully agree in some instances? Because I think that can happen as well, because we see just things differently. But how do you trust? I'm gonna go to the Burrows with this. How do you trust the voice of your spouse, even though you may not fully agree or have the understanding at that moment?
I think that's a good question. I think a lot of times you have to trust God, even when you're frustrated, to the point where, you know what, I'm gonna lean out on my own understanding.
Yes.
I tell my wife a lot of times, I don't have to pray, but you know, if God said it, I'm gonna go ahead and believe it, because I'm trusting the God in you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's not something overnight. Let's be real. It's something that's built. And if you guys are building a foundation, that's what it is, foundation. I would trust you even if I'm frustrated, even if I'm mad, because I'm gonna get past my flesh. Because a lot of times you be like, hey, but who do I lean on? And that's God. If I believe totally in God, then you know what? I'm gonna put down my belief right now, because a lot of time it's pride. A lot of times you just want to get your point across, and God be, and the Holy Ghost be speaking to you and tell you, stop that foolishness.
Yes, yes.
He
The honesty of it. Yes.
Yeah. But the thing is, that helps. I think even a respect thing, that you can be frustrated with your spouse and still believe that the God in her won't lead you astray. So I think it's more towards elder, that you just trust a foundation, and it's like you building something, and what you're building that towards that last day when God say that good and faithful servant. You're building that point where, you know what, even when I was trying to be disobedient, I was obedient. So it even helps you, because at the end of the day, we see God through people. If we can't see God through our spouse, what are we doing? Because that we supposed to be one. I can two walk together unless they agree. Even in disagreement, you have to agree. But I just trust the God in her, and that God comes in all shapes and size and forms. He just don't come in my voice. He comes in my wife's voice too. So I have to respect and believe that if it's from God, because God ain't gonna give a man everything. Sometimes he gonna give it through your spouse. So that's that built foundation.
I thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna go to you, yes, of having that level of saying that this is being built over time. Like, I don't want people to walk away that the conversations that we're having, that it's just like, oh, I woke up like this. No, it requires some work to do in this process, and day by day. And I heard you, Pastor Monte, say letting go of the pride and understanding that you may not get it, but your spouse may, and to be okay with that and still have that level of respect. Pastor Stacy.
One thing that I learned is we had to have the kind of communication about what is his leadership style, right? Because at the end of the day, he's the head of our home. And after I prayed about leadership style, and that's how we counsel too. Your husband is leading, you need to know his leadership style. And once I understood his leadership style, then I'm able to then support him in his leadership role. And so, you know, yes, he's very a democratic leader, you know, very much so. So he'll ask my opinion, he'll ask what I think. And I've learned, look, I might say my opinion, he'll give it some thought, and then I'll rebut. But after that, it's done. And then after that, I have to be able to trust that my husband is going to make the decision that's best both for our family and for our ministry. And I have to be the builder and the nurturer and the undergirder in my prayer, because God can do things that I can't do. As much as I have an influence over my man, God has even more of an influence over my man. And so even if I don't necessarily agree with the direction that he's going, I have to trust that one, even if it's not right, there's a purpose in even the not right. And we're going to learn something even if it's not right. And so it's not necessarily wrong. It's a learning opportunity. And I have to allow him as a leader to be able to make those different decisions and see where it goes. And if he learns something from it, then it's better for me, because now he knows not to go that way again, because we're following him, right? And if the decision was correct, then I also learned something, because I'm like, I didn't even see it that way. And that was the way God wanted us to go. So you got to look at every opportunity, whether we agree or not, as a learning opportunity for us as a couple and us individually. And then also that helps you to trust your spouse even more, because and trust the God in them. Yeah, they heard God correctly. And I might not, I see things this way, but he sees things this way. We're not the same. And you have to respect the two entities that make us one, right? So we're not going to always have the same perspective or the same opinion about something. We're not supposed to all the time, because we're two different people becoming one, right? So that's what I've learned.
Pastor Stacey, I think that is just so good how you rephrase and reframe that, of seeing it as a learning opportunity. Because I think sometimes, I mean, just naturally, you come from your lens, right, of preference, whereas there may be a little fear coming in there, right, and saying, okay, I'm really unsure, but seeing it as, okay, this could be a learning opportunity, so that even if it may not pan out 100, I'm gonna trust in that even we're going to learn. We're not talking about catastrophic that's going to cause harm, right? We're not saying that, right? But okay, I'm gonna relax here and trust, right? And that it'll come out, and then we can learn something even from this. Even if you learn, okay, that just didn't work. You know what I mean? And allowing them the space to be able to do that. And I think that's just, for one, that's a nugget helpful for me. And two, I just think that's a nugget to be helpful for other couples, that allow even your spouse to have their humanity, and that even if they make a mistake, let it, because our kids going to make mistakes, we're going to make mistakes, and so allow that grace, that even if it didn't quite pan out, or however that looks, and it just well may, to be okay in that space, but just to trust that, hey, you made the best decision that you could at that time, and I went with it. And I think it does build something as a couple by doing that. And I'm gonna toss it to Pastor Jay and Dr. J. What are your thoughts on that as we wrap up here, of trusting the voice of your mate, even though sometimes you may disagree in the space on it?
Yeah. Like I said, y'all say some good stuff. So I'm just going to co-sign that. You again, over time, you learn
over time.
If you're paying attention, and care, you'll learn in what areas your spouse does well in. And a lot of times, and you also understand, well, what is their approach? I know, like my wife said earlier, I need to process information before I open my mouth. She'll open her mouth, and then if it's wrong, oh well, we just figure it out. It doesn't work that way. That's the way she do it. And with me, I'm like, dang, we ain't have to go through
fail
that.
first, learn later.
Yeah. So, but that's her approach. To me, I would much rather not go that way and fail if I don't have to. But her is like, we get done a whole lot quicker. We find out sooner rather than later. So you know what I mean? So,
Now you know.
Right now you know.
With her, so here's the thing though. With her, it's just that simple. It's not like, oh dang, now I look crazy. Now I look bad or whatever. No, she's like, okay, let's figure out something else. That's her thing. So so a lot of times what we have to do is learn to value that approach in the other person as well. So sometimes I'm like, okay, well, maybe I don't have to do it my way this time. And I'll tell her, go ahead, I trust you. I've said that a few times over the past just year or so. So I'm like, go ahead. I'll you like, I trust you. All right then. Just in my thing, just let me know what's going on along the way. And I think that's important because, everybody's not going to be like you. Everybody's not going to decide things the way you decide. They're not going to see it the way you see it. And I like what y'all said. They may see something that you don't. And, your frame of thinking for your disagreement is only purely upon your lens. And me knowing that my wife sees things a lot differently, she'll attack things a lot differently. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And in the meantime, just keep this in mind, especially fellas or whomever, please don't go with the I told you so. Hey,
Never, ever.
don't
Mhm.
no. So people need space and opportunity to do the things they do. Like, okay, so now what do we want to? I'll pose it as a question, because first of all, I care. Second of all, I'm involving you on purpose. So I will do things like, okay, so all right, so what are we gonna do this time? What do we want to do? So with this part that didn't work, so what did you see in it that didn't work? So that I'm giving you an opportunity to, and for me, this it is.
Yeah, that's more for him, because I'm like, I'm done. Next.
But in a lot of these exchanges, at the end of it, she's like, oh, I see. Or she's different, y'all. She'll be like, okay, so you are right. So she'll do that, and I'm like, hey, this is my very last thing, I promise you. So even going back earlier when we were talking, I can't remember what we were talking about, but it's leaving my mind that fast. But it's gone. I'm not gonna waste y'all time for me trying to pick it back up. But anyway, go ahead, baby. I know my strengths and my weaknesses.
For us, or for me, I've never had a problem with letting him lead, because even as a young man and our getting to know each other, he's always had that leadership mindset and always showed that he puts people first. I felt that even getting in our relationship, my role is to make sure that he puts himself first sometimes. So I kind of got to pull him back. And just real quick, just tapping into, what I was looking for as far as a marriage situation. I'm a very giving person. So when I started dating again to eventually go into a situation of who I may want to be with in the future, I knew that they had to be deserving of the type of relationship and spoiling that I would give them. And he benefits. So with that being said, and trusting that, his leadership, when I go to him about something, three things. How does it affect family? How does it affect finances? And how would it affect us? Those are the consistent things he asks, because he knows I am impulsive. But did you think about kids? What about us? And what the money looking like? So with us, we have a financial situation where he got his money, I got my money, he got his businesses, I got my businesses. So out of respect, we say, baby, I'm gonna get that. We don't care. Honestly, you go ahead and get it. But thanks for letting me know, because photography stuff is quite pricey, and the things that I want to get into, whether they last or not, can be everybody's.
That's what I was talking about. You see what I'm saying? But hey, her thing is, at least I know now. I found out. I made it work for a good 3, 4, 5 months.
I'll write it off on the taxes and keep it moving. So for me, I know people kind of joke around when it comes to couples. You got that man that trying to get that hit record, and he like 45 years old. If you're using your own money and it affect us, you can be 52 still trying to put that hit out. There you go. Whatever you want to do that's not going to affect family, us, and finances, do what you got to do, babe. There you go.
This was just so very great. I really, really thank you all for being here today, sharing your insight, sharing your wisdom, sharing your realness, just showing up as yourself. And I really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Pastor Jay. Thank you, Dr. J. Thank you, Pastor Monte. Thank you, Pastor Stacy. And for all of those who are on Facebook who have viewed in, or who are here on the Zoom, thank you for taking the time. And prayerfully, I know you've gotten some nuggets that even if you aren't married or single or wherever you fall, I think that you can just still glean from nuggets. And one big takeaway that I have is to allow your mate to be their own person. You know what I mean? Allow them to be able to flourish, but still support and have that level of respect, and trust the God in your mate. And even if it's not, because Pastor Monte said it's a building thing, right? Because every couple is at a different space, right? Some couples don't trust the voice of their space, because that's just the reality of it. But allow little by little, as even Pastor Stacy said, that even if you don't fully trust, we're not talking about somebody doing detrimental, you're going to harm yourself, and no, we're not talking about those things. But even if it doesn't fully swing a certain way, look at it as a learning opportunity. But of course, stay prayerful in everything that you do and be led by the Holy Spirit. End of bottom line. And so thank you all for being here. Until next time of the humanity of clergy, we have different topics every single month. And I thought this topic was great. And so give a big hand to our guests and all the attendees. This was fun. I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot. And so till next time.